listening around the world. It's time for the Conservative Syndicate with your host, John Matthews, self-ordained, politically incorrect, mad prophet of the airwaves. The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most knowledgeable activists and pundits today that together seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement with those seeking the truth regarding the similarities and differences between the religion of politics and the politics of religion.
We have put in place the toughest ethics laws and toughest transparency rules of any administration in history.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever.
Did you mislead Americans about taxes, about keeping your plan, in order to get the bill passed?
No, I did not. Hey, all you can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is. For some reason, people keep on being surprised when I do what I said I was going to do. I'm doing it because I said I was going to do it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
We are 5 years away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
And now, your host, John Matthews.
Hey, how we doing out there tonight? All across this great land of ours and around the world, it is that time for the Conservative Syndicate. Come to you live right now out here from the old left coast. I am your host, John Matthews, mad prophet of the airways, on a mission from God, and that mission is to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state. And we thank you for taking the time to tune in and listen to us, and hopefully we do some education, we give you some information, and maybe even inspire you to get engaged in the dialogue that is going on today. And God knows we need some reason. We need some voices of reason out there, because it seems on the surface we're losing the battle. But as a conservative Christian, I always like to tell people this. I've read the Bible, and I know who wins. That's what's important, okay? And never lose sight of the fact that none of this caught God by surprise. None of this is... anything that's happened is not anything that he hasn't been aware of. It's everything that he has told us is going to happen. I mean, there's so many times in the Bible where Jesus says, I tell you now, I tell you beforehand, so that you know when you see this stuff, this is what's going on. So we can have that calm and peace in our mind of knowing that we're on the right side of history, to coin a very favorite liberal phrase, and that we do win in the end. It's just a matter of what side you're on when you stand before your Creator. Having said that, I want to bring on my co-host and partner in crime, Joe Hakos from Drive Report. How are you doing tonight, Joe?
Well, Mr. Hakos has been captured by the homosexual activists and will not be able to attend anymore until he renounces his God and says it's okay for everybody to just be happy.
Oh, man, I'm glad I got away from them folks, John. Whoa, my goodness.
Wow, I was asking Joe before the show, what kind of medication he's on. he's got the happy pills out there. Got the happy pills going out there right now.
It's all prescribed, John. It's all good. If it's prescribed, it's for medical purposes. Don't you know? It's what the doctor says. It's all right. Yeah. We can turn this into the Dr. Demento show pretty soon if we want.
Oh, you remember Dr. Demento?
Oh, well, of course I do, John. Doesn't everybody?
Oh, I mean, that guy,
take me away.
There was nobody like Dr. Demento. I think probably the closest I've ever seen was, what's his name? Weird Al Yankovic.
He's weird.
He was a little bit more creative, but Dr. Demento was just great. I mean,
yeah, but he didn't. I don't think Al has the lasting power Dr. Demento did. I mean, he was amazing, that guy.
Yeah.
I know. Saturdays were fun with Dr. Demento.
Oh, there was another guy. I remember growing up, there were a couple of people out there that on late night television I loved watching. One of them was Dr. Demento on the radio, but there was another guy. I can't remember his name right now. I think it was Seymour. I think it was his name. and he was like this host of the late night scary movie programs.
Yes.
And just really kind of looked like John Carradine on steroids. And he wore, a black cape and a black hat. And then Elvira, Mistress of the Darkness.
Yes, Elvira. Let's see, what were her two assets? Oh, that's right. I think I can call those out. Yes, I remember what they were. Yeah, we had a guy growing up that was Bill Cardell, Chili Billy, and he was out there on the same kind. It was a local thing. So
yeah.
It was I think it was back in the golden days, age of television, local television, as opposed to now we have MSNBC.
Yeah, I was. I actually, somebody sent me something today. It says watching MSNBC for the news is kind of like watching Hogan's Heroes to understand the Holocaust.
Yes, I did like that. And it's a little bit too deep for those folks to catch on to because they're like, huh?
Well, we're going to talk. We're going to try to put all these pieces together today in our first hour here on the Conservative Syndicate. What this means, there is an overall objective here, and that's really what we want to kind of bring home to you. It's not necessary that we go through every single issue here, every single ruling that's taken place in the last couple of weeks through the Supreme Court and all the other things that are going on out there. But we want to kind of put it together in a big picture and give you an idea that what we're seeing here is we are seeing Barack Obama's fundamental transformation. We are seeing the new America that everybody on the left has wanted for so many decades now. And again, it's not something that we should be fearful of. It's not something that we should, be cowering under our covers over. But it is something that we need to be aware of because, unfortunately, those of us on our side of the argument have taken just a little bit too long to become active in mass. I mean, we have factions out there like what we do in this show, and there's other shows like us. But the idea of somehow here there has got to be a central unifying theme, which should be centered on taking back our nation and making it once again one nation under God. That should be the centralizing theme. The problem is that so many like us today have been ignorant either willfully or deceitfully, and now having to come to terms with all this. We're going to talk a little bit later about same-sex marriage, where this is going. It's already starting to snowball. It's already starting to go exactly where those of us on this show and other shows and bloggers and churches and things out there, people that have been watching and participating, we saw this coming, and we knew it was coming, and it's here. And so we really need to kind of take stock of that. And, excuse me. And then on the other hand, where it's going to go from here, things that are happening right now. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happened in the last couple of weeks, tie it together into the big picture so you can see. Start looking at the signs out there and seeing what's going on and then deciding which side you're going to be on. You're going to be on one side or the other, whether you choose to be or not. So, you can join the fight or you can stand on the sidelines and be placed on the team that they determine you're going to be on. So that's what we're going to do. Second hour, Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live is going to be with us. We're going to talk about what happened over in Greece. Greece is now, I guess, in the final stages of financial death, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on over there. And I want to try to, because Greece is being used by people on the left as some type of model of how government is supposed to save the economy, and yet here we watch what's going on. They're on the verge of death. So I'm going to ask Bob to come on and talk about that, and then how that relates to us. What are the signs we see there that we can see here, that kind of thing. We'll see where that conversation goes. I wanted to really, though, open up a show today with an article that I got, and I've seen it flowing all over the place here, and it's one of these things that nobody paid any attention to until it got passed, which happened, I think, yesterday. And actually, no. Jerry Brown signed the bill yesterday. It passed, I believe, back last month, and now it was signed into law today, and that is SB 277, forcing all the children to get vaccinated in schools before they go to schools. Now, we had what was her name? Melissa?
Melissa, yeah, what's her last name? I can't recall her last name, but I remember her first name was Melissa.
Yeah, Melissa Lloyd. That was her name. Melissa Lloyd, who was one of the major organizers against SB 277. She came on the show and she informed us that children have, 50 vaccinations by the time they're 5 years old?
It's some crazy number, yes.
Yeah, it was 50. I believe it was 50. And we were out there, one of the things that happened to me, and I joined some of the groups that were out there on Facebook, and I tried to bring them into this big fight and say, you guys are focusing on one issue, but you've got to look at the big picture, and we'll stand with you. We just ask you to stand with us. And all these mothers were all upset. One of them bounced me. They wanted me out of the group because I was suggesting that I combine this issue with everything else that's out there because this was their special issue. This was their thing. And, they got their special ed children and their kids with autism and stuff. They're all worried about this. And if we bring anything else into the plan or into the conversation, we're going to detract from that. Well, you lost anyways.
Yeah.
And I told you were going to lose anyways because you don't see the big picture. If you don't attack these things within the perspective of the big picture, you're not going to win. And I said that. But anyway, Jerry Brown has signed this law into place. And here, the reason I bring this up is because the reaction on the liberal front has been astounding. Jim Carrey comes out today and calls California lawmakers fascists.
You mean Canadian Jim Carrey?
Yeah. Well, they're fascists in Congress, the Assembly out here, in Congress out here in California, because government is forcing parents to do something that parents don't want to do. So they're fascist. And I just split a gut. This is the funniest thing I've ever heard Jim Carrey say. Now, he's a pretty funny guy. This is the funniest thing I've ever heard him say. And it just points out the fact that liberals think this way. Government is fascist only when government does something that they don't like. But if the government does something they like, then anybody who opposes government are fascists. So we take this and put this in the big picture here now. I didn't hear any outrage out here, very little outrage out here in California when Prop 8 was overturned by the judges.
That's true.
I heard very little rumblings when they passed AB 1266, which is the gender bill that allows any child on any given day to determine what their gender is when they go to school and use the facilities associated with that gender. Very little on that. You heard nothing but applause and celebration when high schools started electing their homosexual transgender homecoming queens. Not a word. But now the government's going to force you to inject your kids with chemicals. And now all of a sudden
that's the straw that broke the back. That's where the government has overstepped its bounds in California.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Right. And we're all out there hanging our rainbow flags over the Capitol building on same-sex marriage, stating as we're hanging the flags that, hey, we're coming after religious freedom next because you guys are imposing your beliefs on us. And that doesn't make a big squawk with anybody, but boy, you talk about giving my kid a flu shot against my will. Oh my goodness. Here's the irony. Here's the paradox. This is a hypocrisy of liberalism. If I like what the government's doing, anybody who opposes it are fascists and haters and bigots and racists and homophobes and everything else.
Yep.
But if you do something I don't like, oh, God help you. God help you. Hell hath no fury rather than a comedian scorned.
What a way to go to a break, John.
Yeah, we got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to open up our discussion here. But yeah, I just wanted to set the mood for you because we're gonna bear some wounds today. So stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right, General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Okay, we are back, and I am your host, John Matthews, and you're listening to the Conservative Syndicate right here on the Conservative Syndicate Show. I guess that's as good a place as any. I've got to get more into the habit of keeping in mind that we're all over the place now. We're not just on one station anymore. We're out there globally. I think we're on, last time I counted, 6 different outlets. Right now, we're coming to you right now from Spreaker. We're coming to you on Shake and Wake Radio. We're coming to you on the Roar Radio Network, SHR Media. I mean, PNN Talk Radio. We're just all over the place these days, and so we want to thank you for taking the time to join us. I want to talk about trying to get this whole thing in a big picture perspective, because as usual, what we normally see when there's an onslaught of news like this, what was it, 4 or 5 rulings from the Supreme Court in the last couple of weeks, Joe?
Well, it's the end of the session, so it's the typical madness from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So they're, we're going to rule. We're giving our rulings. Everybody stand by. They should really, get elephants and clown cars and popcorn machines in front of the Supreme Court building and just treat it like the circus that it's become.
Yeah, not unlike, very much unlike some of the congressional things we see go, where everybody's on a rush to get home for the holidays or the weekends or their sessions, and would close their sessions down, and all this last minute wheeling and dealing that goes on just to get one thing done.
Yeah, well, their concern is to get reelected. That burden is not placed upon our Supreme Court members, though.
Yeah, which it should be. I think we've talked in the last couple of weeks a lot about whether the Constitution should be amended, whether it shouldn't. What is it going to take to get things back to the way our forefathers established it, and with the right intent behind their words and what they were saying when they were saying it. And you
want to know what the answer to that is?
I'm dying to hear it.
An informed and engaged electorate,
right.
Not the mind-numb zombie sheeple that are voting now.
Yeah, you're absolutely
what we could get out of our government. What's the government going to give me crap?
Yeah,
that crowd needs to be set aside.
Yeah, and I have become a firm believer. I would like to see some things done in terms of amendments in the Constitution, but I'm more for repealing things than I am adding. I like the idea of returning the selection of senators to state legislators rather than by popular vote. I'm very much in favor of term limits, which I think if we added anything, it should be that. There should be a term limit. We have term limits for the president. Why don't we have term limits for Congress?
I'd like to get rid of the 16th Amendment.
Yeah. And
get away from that income tax, that taxation system that we have.
Yeah,
it's
would
ruinous.
be a big move. Yeah. So we look at that. We look at getting rid of. To me, I would like to get rid of the 14th Amendment. I think the thing has been so bastardized that we can classify anybody within the meaning that everybody's interpreted it to mean today. And we don't have to apply it just to whether somebody's born in this country or not. Let's start applying it to what gender they think they are.
Yeah, that's kind of what they did in the SCOTUS ruling on homosexual marriage. It's exactly they were using the 14th Amendment as part of that.
Yeah, so all this stuff needs to be cleared out, and let's get back to some basics: individual accountability and responsibility. There's where you start, and when everything goes to hell, who's to blame? The individual that doesn't get involved, and collectively, the individuals that don't get involved allow those that will get involved that have the wrong idea and the wrong agenda to take over. That's what's happened here. It's not that. It's just that people have just quit giving a damn about what goes on in the country, and the evil side of human nature is taken over. It's filled that vacuum, and we have what do? We have our first transracial president who's out there just fundamentally transforming the United States of America. That we got what we voted for. We got what we got. Yeah. So
we voted for it. Well, I certainly did. If we as America, then okay, but I certainly didn't vote for him. I can stand up before my God and go, I didn't do that.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, when you have too many doing the stupid stuff, sometimes, there's a really good argument there. When somebody says to me, well, whatever I do, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, I should be allowed to do it. Hey, when you vote for idiots, you hurt me.
Yep. Yes. And it's just not you. It's your family. It's your neighbors. It's your neighbors' kids. It's people in other states. And in fact, and we really want to get down to it's people in other nations that have been hurt by the election twice of this individual.
Just this homosexual marriage thing.
Okay.
My wife's Filipino. We watched Filipino channel here and GMC, two of the major Filipino channels over in the Philippines, and they have gone stock raving mad over this homosexual ruling. I just love it because I don't know how it's going to change their culture, but for the most part in the Philippines, homosexuality is accepted. It's not really embraced to the extent that maybe homosexual activists would like it, but it's accepted. And the way it's accepted is people understand that people choose to be homosexual, and homosexuals understand that people don't like it. Some people don't like it. Not everybody agrees with it. And everybody stays in their own closet. So it's kind of like you want to be the way you are, okay. And the other person, okay, this is the way I am. I know you may not like it, but, I'm not going to hate you over it. That kind of thing. They're the homosexual community is very involved in their media over there in terms of their movies. You can't watch a single show over there that doesn't have at least one homosexual in it. But they're, to be honest, they're treated a lot like clowns. They're the comedy. Because, you got these guys walking around, acting like women and dressing like women and, all the movements, the effeminate movements and everything else. And they're really kind of the comedy of what goes on over there in terms of the movies and the soap operas and stuff. The Philippines live on soap operas. That is the substance over there. That is the staple over there. So it's an interesting thing. And then you go to countries like, what was it, Turkey yesterday? Turkey or Greece? It was Turkey. I think it was Turkey. They tried to have a gay pride parade.
Yeah, it was Turkey.
Yeah, and the government came out with fire hoses and just hosed everybody off the street. Yeah,
it's kind of reminiscent of 1960s American civil rights movement.
Yeah. So it was. It's interesting to see how what we do here does affect how the world looks at things.
Yes, we do have an effect on the world.
Yeah. Of course, Barack Obama would tell us that this is a good effect, that we've had a positive effect, because after all, after these rulings, we are all, quote unquote, a little bit more free.
Yeah, well, he thought he had an effect on Vladimir Putin too. Just ask those in Ukraine how that's worked out for him.
Okay, all right. But the idea, what I was leading up to here is the idea that right now it doesn't really feel good to be a conservative.
Oh well, I feel just as good as I did the other day, John, because I know I'm right.
Oh, yeah. In that regard, yes. And that's what gets you to bed every night. That's what gives you the peace of mind, as you said earlier, that allows you to stand before God and know that you stood for the right. Excuse me. I got the hiccups here. Excuse me. That you stand before your God and you know that, you're going to hear, well, okay, well done, good and faithful servant, not depart from me, evil and wicked servant. People don't understand. You're serving, as Bob Dylan used to say. My favorite song of Bob Dylan is you're going to serve somebody. It may be the devil and it may be the Lord, but you're going to serve somebody. And
yes.
That's really what it's about. But in terms of political, just the political atmosphere out there, I think we'd be lying if we'd say it hasn't been a little bit exasperating. Not so much with how the left has progressed, but how the right has basically been caught like a deer in the headlights. How the right has for the most part stagnated and not joined and unified in a central direction. I'm not talking about the Republican Congress. We know that these guys are just gutless, ballless twits. But in terms of the electorate that Joe was talking about, this is where our problem lies. It's the electorate. The majority, we are still the majority in this country. The conservatives are still the majority in this country. Christians are still the majority in this country. Now, we can argue all day and night about how we define that. But we know that if we had central thoughts, as Christians, Jesus is Lord, boom, period. Everything else is details. Doctrine we can squabble about all day. But if Jesus is Lord, what Jesus says is true. Period. If we had just that one central theme, it wouldn't make any difference if we were Baptists, Methodists, Evangelists, or whatever. Okay? We would have that one thing to drive our moral reasoning, and we would gauge our the moral compass by that understanding alone. That can unify.
Yes, it can. And we've had instances like that, just like in Charleston, when the family members of those victims of that idiot that went out there and shot them all up, that moronic. Mm-hmm. I'm being very kind right now to that individual. But those families said, hey, we can forgive you.
Right.
As Christians. But what happened? Well, the president of the United States went down, and his folks all went down there and said, well, don't listen to that. Listen to what I have to say, which wasn't as good.
Yeah, and that should be the rule rather than the exception. And that's, that is the one area that needs to turn around more than anything. That one area turns around, and this country could change in a term of one president. We could get back.
But you noticed that wasn't allowed to carry the day.
Yeah, Reagan showed that in one term, you can completely turn around the attitude and mood and direction of the country. So as I was reading today just before we come on the show, this idea that the people are out there saying, well, Barack Obama is just like Ronald Reagan because he fundamentally did some things that, Reagan fundamentally turned us back to the fundamentals that made every republic great. Barack Obama has fundamentally transformed a lot of those things. So in that regard, it's true. But it does show you, just remember here, Barack Obama did this in about 6.5 years. He turned this around. Now, the seeds were out there. It isn't like Barack Obama came up with the idea. What he came up with was a strategy, and he pulled it off. And you got to give him credit for that, whether you like it or not. Okay? We got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to continue this because there is a silver lining. I mean, we may be sitting here, all hanging our head a little bit, but only because of the current. The current flow of things, but that doesn't mean it can't change. I mean, this is America, for crying out loud. We can change, and it can change. Yeah, we can be the nation of hope and change again. Maybe not right now, but we can be. So stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. We'll be right back. You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Term life insurance. It can be a powerful way to protect your assets and your family. You work hard to earn and save your money to build a nest egg for the future. Don't let it get wiped out because you didn't plan ahead. Take the time now and make a small investment in $500,000 or more in quality term life insurance. Call the Term Lifeline and let us shop the best companies to give you the lowest rates. We specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. Ask about some of our 10 and 20-year fixed rate plans with guaranteed rates. Call the Term Lifeline right now for your free insurance quote. 800-870-3609. 800-870-3609. You owe it to yourself to protect your family and your assets. Make term life insurance part of that plan. Call the Term Lifeline right now. 800-870-3609. 800-870-3609.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoza. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoza Live, daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you'll get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decision concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardozalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardozalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did. Hey, we are back. I am your host, John Matthews. You are listening to the Conservative Syndicate, and along with my co-host, Joe Hakos from Dryer Report, we're just trying to put a little hair on the donkey here. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some catchy phrase. There has been some pretty strong feelings of discouragement. I see what's out there in social media and stuff, and there's a lot of people. There are some people that are discouraged, but I also see a lot of people that are just not going to give up. They're not going to give in. We're going to win this battle. We just got to, step back, regroup, come at it again. One of the things we say in this show all the time is it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It only matters how many times you get up. And that's really what life is about. That's what the race in life is about. How many times can you get up and keep going? We found an article out here. I think we'll lead into this segment with it. It was an article written by Lisa Schifrin, and she is a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. She has also a GOP speechwriter, and she penned an article called "How It Feels to Be a Conservative Amid a Liberal Tsunami." Now, you remember. This phrase came up just back in 2014 when the Republicans landslide victory in the House and the Senate. We got the majority of the Senate back, and that was the phrase that was being used, the Republican tsunami. Unfortunately, those people that were, stormed into Congress and the Senate have turned out to be nothing more than illusions, mirages. But the point being that a tsunami gives that indication that you're basically blindsided. I mean, you see this big wave coming at you, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. You can't run fast enough. You can't climb high enough. If you're in the path, you're history. And that's really what I think the media wants us to believe. But Lisa Schifrin is a conservative, and one of the things that she pens in her article, which I thought is just iconic in its own way. The culture wars have been an unfair fight. The aggressors were hailed as victims in favor of love, while those who sought to defend traditional morality and families are now haters, demoralizing literally and emotionally. And that's the feeling you get when you know that what you've been fighting for is not based on hatred, it's not based on bitterness, it's not based on elitism. It's not based on white privilege. It's not based on socioeconomic privilege. What it's based on is the idea you just know what is right. You just know You know that you know. I've often heard, and I define deceit myself as not knowing what you don't know what you don't know. And wisdom is knowing what you know and knowing that it's right. And so, you go out there and you fight the good fight of faith, and you end up getting schnockered over it, okay? It doesn't matter whether you get defeated. It only matters that you fight. I think that's a secret to life that a lot of people never really get their heads around. Success is not achieving a destination. To me, success is found in the journey. It's the journey. It's getting out there and walking the walk and putting yourself in a position where you risk, you get slapped around, you have some successes, you have some failures, but you never take your eye off of where it is you're going. And you just continue to go. If you reach that place, well, then there's someplace else to go after that. It's not just, I'm here, I've arrived, and now everything just comes to a standstill. That's called liberalism, okay? So, having said that, she goes on to say this one thing, and this is where we'll get into our discussion about the rulings here. We're going to try to put some of these rulings in perspective here. She says, despite a majority of votes against ratifying gay marriage in most states, or more likely because of that majority against, the Supremes pulled a previously unheard of right to gay marriage out of the Constitution, rule of law, whatever. If one had confidence that having one marriage, the gay community would retire to newly wedded bliss, we might get over it. But persecution of those who do not believe that 5 justices can confer sameness on a departure from natural marriage is on its way. Churches, synagogues, and other institutions that retain their bedrock religious law will not be spared. Removing the tax-exempt status of churches will destroy them, is on the table. Now, I want to make this initial comment, then I want to get Joe in on this. The idea that removing tax-exempt status will remove the church or will destroy the church is, I think, a gross overstatement. Now, it will shut down some churches, but those churches probably need to be shut down anyway, because if their whole survival, if their whole existence is based on a tax-exempt status, they're not really churches anyways. They're nonprofits. Let them go, I think was it Mark Shaw, Joe, that told us on Monday that churches can file as churches and not be considered nonprofits?
Yeah, exactly. And you can, the IRS already knows that that's a true indication of what you really are, and they can't even fight you on it.
Yeah,
so just stand up to them, and so what? Who cares about? You can't serve 2 masters. We've been over this before.
Right. Losing your tax-exempt status would simply mean you go into the goat category rather than the sheep. That's how I look at it, and good riddance. So what? Creeful Dollar won't get his $67 million jet. Oh, I'm sad. Joe Osteen won't have his $350 million church. I don't care. Those aren't churches anyways. They're clubs. Okay, so self-help groups. I often refer to Joel Osteen as the Tony Robbins of Christianity. Everybody's just feel good. God loves you, and all you got to do is just accept His love, and everything will just be fine, hunky dory. That kind of stuff.
Well, it reminds me of Richard Dawson in Running Man. That Schwarzenegger movie.
Oh yeah. Never thought of it that way, but that's a very good analogy. Yes. So anyway, having said that, Joe, you had brought up 2 of the rulings or 2 of the dissents on the gay marriage. Let's start with that one. Let's start with the same-sex marriage here, and let's just kind of get an overview of what was said and what does that really mean. I mean,
to your point, you were talking about in the article from what's her name, Miss Lisa Schifrin, and we're talking about how the churches and everything are going to be they're going to be persecuted for standing their ground, basically, even after this. So, and this was brought out in the dissent, both Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. In Justice Thomas's, he writes, in our society, marriage is not simply a governmental institution; it is a religious institution as well. Today's decision might not change the former, but it might change the former, but it cannot change the latter. In other words, it's always going to be a religious institution.
Right.
It appears all but inevitable that the two will come into conflict, particularly as individuals and churches are confronted with the demands to participate in and endorse civil marriages between same-sex couples. The majority appears, in other words, those that agree with the same-sex marriage ruling, the majority appears unmoved by that inevitability. It makes only a weak gesture towards religious liberty in a single paragraph, at paragraph 27 of this document. And even at that gesture is a misunderstanding of the religious liberty in our nation's tradition. Religious liberty is about more than just the protection for religious organizations and persons as they seek to teach the principles that are so fulfilling and so central to their lives and faith. Religious liberty is about freedom of action in the matters of religion generally, and the scope of that liberty is directly correlated to the civil restraints placed upon religious practice. Although our Constitution provides some protection against governmental restrictions on religious practices, the people have long elected to afford broader protections than this court's constitutional precedents mandate. Had the majority, and here's the important part, had the majority allowed the definition of marriage to be left to the political process as the Constitution requires, the people would have considered the religious liberty implications of deviating from their traditional definition as part of the deliberative process. Instead, the majority's decision short-circuits that process with potentially ruinous consequences for religious liberty. In other words, they should have stayed out of it.
Right. And we know that Justice Roberts kind of penned the same thing, but in a much more condescending way, saying basically that the court isn't there to legislate.
As he legislates.
Yeah, 24 hours after he stands up for Obamacare and says the courts are here to legislate.
Yes, we're going to change and we're going to make that law better because we can define our words. Here's what Alito said. Today's decision usurps the constitutional right of the people to decide whether to keep or alter the traditional understanding of marriage. The decision will also have other important consequences. It will be used to vilify Americans who are unwilling to assent to the new orthodoxy. In the course of its opinion, the majority compares traditional marriage laws to laws that deny the equal treatment for African Americans and women. This implication of this analogy will be exploited by those who are determined to stamp out every vestige of dissent.
Now, so what we have here, and then we take just, I'm paraphrasing here, Clarence Thomas's dissent, where he talks about the idea that government, what basically this ruling does is government is assigning dignity. Government is determining what defines dignity, and he's saying government has no place, nor can it, even if it wanted to assign dignity to somebody. Dignity is something you either have or you don't have.
No, you have it. The minute you are born, you have it.
I mean, but you choose to define it within the proper parameters of that. What we're saying here, proponents of same-sex marriage are saying we need recognition on the same level as heterosexual marriage because because of our dignity. It's a self-esteem issue.
Yeah, well, government can't give you that.
Yeah, and self-esteem is something. That's why it's called self-esteem. It's how you see yourself. It's not how anybody else sees you. And so the government is basically assigning esteem to a pandered group or demographic and saying everybody else, you have to agree with my judgment of what esteem is and what defines it and what it looks like under penalty of law. Because what's left here now is the only thing that's left is, as these justices have all pointed out, is judgment.
Yeah.
The world is going to start judging the church. The very thing they keep accusing us of doing, they are now doing.
Yep.
We have been judged as the haters. We've been judged as the people that need to be removed. Our dissent needs to be silenced, or we need to be eliminated. One or the other. That's where it's going. And we've seen that. We're going to go to break here, but we're going to see that. We're going to see this when we come back, because some of the things that are already floating out there in terms of the new concept or the new definition of what's right and wrong. We'll be right back. Stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. Don't go away.
You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification require cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing and other restrictions apply. If you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Only Dish brings you the best in entertainment for less than $20 a month. Cut the cable and don't get directed. Switch to Dish because at just $19.99, Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. It's so simple. The same channels cost less with Dish. So since you can't see the difference, don't pay the difference. Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Get premium movie channels free for 3 months, starting at just $19.99. Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. Call now to save with Dish. Dial 1-800-600-1645. That's 1-800-600-1645. The same channels for less than $20 a month. Dish. Call 1-800-600-1645 for details.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call this special tax hotline today for free info at 1-866-761-0959. That's 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959.
You're listening to the Shake and Wake Radio Network, where the truth is all that matters, and the truth will make you free. ShakeandWakeRadio.com.
All right, hey, we're back. I am your host, John Matthews. You're listening to the Conservative Syndicate, and with my co-host, Joe Hakos. Wow, we've done a good job there. We covered quite a bit in quite a little bit of time. Something that we don't always pull off well on this show, but we did it. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of just take all this stuff together here. I'm going to kind of paint a big picture for you here. We had in the last couple of weeks 5 or 6 different rulings come down from the Supreme Court. Some of them went for the left and Obama's administration. A couple of them went against. We have one coming up here. I think it's going to be, probably the subject of maybe much of a campaign with whatever days Obama has left in office. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case on unions using members' dues to support political ideologies and candidates that perhaps the members themselves do not support. And that would be a traumatic blow if that happens. Basically, what you've got now is the potential of setting up, in some states at least, right-to-work states, because the money being funneled into the union coffers going into elections and issues and stuff like that the members don't want. That would be, I think, a tremendous blow, because we know that a large portion of money that comes into Democrat candidates come from unions. And there would really be something that would, I think, really kind of put a dent in their checkbook. But we had a ruling on the EPA. I believe that the Supreme Court ruled against the EPA. Am I right?
Yes, they ruled against it. They said you do have to consider the cost of implementing your edicts, you unelected bureaucrats, you. And so, clean coal companies, the effect was they were basically, like Obama said in San Francisco, you can have a coal-fired electric plant. I'll just, run you into bankruptcy. I will make sure that you will never make a profit from that. And so he tried to do that with the EPA, and finally the court said, no, you can't do that, EPA. and really doesn't help all the other edicts that came down from the EPA by some coal companies that weren't able to survive.
Okay, and then we had the ruling that I guess now is going to allow housing discrimination to be expanded, where there's even talk about the idea of Section 8 housing being built in neighborhoods that don't normally have that kind of thing. Basically, you can't sell there. If I understand the ruling right, it's basically that people that can't afford to live in the neighborhood can't be discriminated against because they can't live there.
Yeah. Well, remember the subprime mortgage crisis? That's exactly what was allowed to happen. Those evil Republicans said, stop this. It's going to ruin the market, and you're going to cause undue damage to the economy. And oh, my goodness, what happened? Well, in 2007, we had undue damage to the economy from the subprime mortgage loan crisis. Yes, same thing. Let's try it again.
Yeah, so what we had basically on these rulings, we had the majority of the rulings went with the left, and we had a couple of minor victories for the right. Here's my point. I'm going to tie this in now because I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse here. I'm going to go back to the Confederate flag. And the reason I'm going back to that is because that is the symbol. It's the symbol that represents everything that's going on right now. And it's not the white racist haters out there that flag has come to represent. Actually, that flag has come to represent everything that is progressive. Because basically what it is they want to hang that flag on anybody that has any type of dissent with anything that they deem is free, what freedom is. Obama defined the allowing the homosexuals now to marry is freedom. See, people don't understand what freedom is. Freedom is the ability to discern the borders of restriction and then willfully stay within those borders. Freedom is not do whatever you feel like doing. But here's my point. The flag is now becoming, and has been in just a couple of weeks, been turned from something that, maybe some racist groups out there, white supremacist groups out there have used it. Maybe there are people that relate to it in terms of it being a symbol of slavery and the institution down in the South that wanted to maintain that. I'm not denying that. But for the majority of Americans, it was a piece of cloth that people identified with as far as their heritage and where they grew up. Now, that's not to take away from the fact that some people in the South are racist, just like some people from California are racist, just like some people from Boston are racist. But it was more of a heritage identifier than it was a symbol of, if I'm flying a Confederate flag, that means I think all black people should be lynched. You know, that's not what it's come to represent. But now on the broader basis, now not only is it being used to identify racists, now it's being used to identify homophobes, now it's being used to identify the rich who think the poor need to stay poor, or those of us who believe that fourth-generation welfare families should be accepted, rather than bringing these people up and making them responsible and accountable for their own lives. All these things are grouping together. And what it's turning into now, we're about a week away from it, is it's going to become the symbol of white, racist, evangelical Christian America. It's going to group everybody, and that flag is going to be draped over every single aspect of white America and painted as racist, haters, homophobes, for the purpose of justifying coming down on religious freedom. That's where this thing is going. That is the big picture here. That flag was chosen as a symbol, whether it was convenient or not, whether it was a matter of something that came out of not letting a good crisis go to waste or not. It was chosen as the symbol that is going to become representative of everything the left hates, which is everything on the right. And that includes God and religion. And so that's what's going to happen here. You're going to start. It's already starting. It's all the arguments are already out there. You've already got people out there saying, okay, now that we've got the right to marry, now we have to come after the church. Hillary Clinton has already stated the church needs to change its views. Our president has already stated the church needs to change its views. We have people like George Takei out there, representatives of the activist homosexual community, celebrity types out there. Yeah, we got to go after religious freedom now because they're imposing their beliefs on ours. Not you're imposing your beliefs on the church. We're imposing our beliefs on you. The bottom line here is this is it's now coming into one centralized attack. It's no longer flanking from the sides and coming from the rear. Now it's a front-on, head-on, frontal assault because they think they have the momentum. Let's go after the church. Let's burn them down. There was a church that burned down, a black church that burned down this morning or yesterday. Did you hear about that, Joe?
Yeah, there's I think there's like 7 of them actually.
Yeah,
but some of them weren't all arson, John. Some of them were acts of God.
Okay, so the narrative that's going to be painted, of course, is that white racists, waving their Confederate flag, are out there burning down black churches. I would bet you dollars to donuts, without even hesitating, those churches were burned down by black people. They were burned down by, or maybe not black people. They were burned down by
John, not all of them were burned down by black people, unless black people is lightning hitting your church and setting it on fire.
Okay.
So there were acts of God involved. Some of them were just faulty electrical stuff. Yes, there were a couple that are still under investigation that look like arson, but not all of them have been burned down by anybody. It's an act of God.
An act of God. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, God is still in control of all this,
Yeah, we said at the beginning of the show, but we also know that in the eyes of a liberal, God needs to stop it. God needs to.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, God needs to quit being God, And by the way,
God. Well, that's what they'd really like, to have man be God, and that's not going to work. That's never going to work. God is God.
Yeah.
You should just learn to get over it.
Well, it's like that leftist saying I've heard out there so often. It's not God that I have a problem with. It's his club.
Yeah, and he's going to use it to hit you over the head.
Yeah, but see, as long as that club exists, whether it's a good club or not, whether it's a segregated club or not, it's still there, and it's still a reminder. See, it doesn't matter if the church is racist or not. It's that the church is there.
Yeah, it exists.
And it reminds them of what they inherently know to be true. And that is that they have chosen to rebel, they've chosen to resist, they've chosen to exalt themselves above God.
Well, I want people to look up online and find an article about individuals from the homosexual community that are invited into the White House for a victory lap from the Obama administration, and they flip off Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush's portraits in the White House. I want you to look at the pictures, though, not of the act of them doing it, just the expression on their faces. They just won a quote-unquote major victory in their cause, and they look like the most unhappy people to walk the face of the earth. So, this is not the pod. This won't end with their victory here. They want more. They want it all. They want religion and God and Christians to be not here anymore. Just pretty much like the Muslims want to do, get rid of the Christians.
Right.
So, hello.
Yeah. We're either zealots or infidels. It's one or the other. And we need to be removed. And that's the point.
Yeah.
Everything we've been talking about in the last hour is just for this one, just so you understand this one thing. The war is not over. The war has not been won. It's actually just begun. And now what's happened is all the different strategies, all the different groups, all the different, what do you want to call them? Battalions and platoons and all this. Everything now is being grouped together for the purpose of a full-on frontal assault. And the church is going to do one or two things. It's going to stand up and resist, or it's going to bend over, if I can use that phrase, and take it in the rear. It's going to be one or the other. And we determine what that is. I don't know about you. I'm going down swinging if I go down. But like I said, I read the Bible. Somewhere in here, God intervenes. And so it remains to be seen what happens there. Or when it happens. Not what happens. It's when it happens. That's the one that we know what happens. We just don't know when it's going to happen. So having said that, we're coming into the end of our first hour here. It's time for the Edwards Notebook. And we have Robert Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live joining us the next hour. We're going to talk a little bit about the economy over in Greece and see what we can learn from that in terms of what's going on over here in the old good old U.S. of A. So stay with us right here on the Conservative Syndicate. We'll be right back.
Just like oil and water don't mix, neither is Sharia and U.S. law compatible. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, U.S. law recognizes the unalienable rights of the individual, whether male or female. Sharia law embraces numerous practices and punishments that are contrary to long-held Western ideals of justice and dignity of the human person. Nonetheless, despite the many blessings of rights and liberties ensconced in American life, the foundation for Sharia law in the West is systematically being laid throughout America. Sharia is incompatible with the concept of U.S. citizenship and national loyalty. That is one of the reasons why many governmental school districts promote Sharia law to students. Those of the progressive left see this as a positive development, primarily because those of the left have displayed very little loyalty to the Constitution concept of limited government and a free, morally upright people. Thus, their embrace of the dedicated Muslims who, like the leftists, would like nothing more than to see an end to our constitutionally limited republic. The problem the American progressives face is that their heads would also roll because they are not Muslims. Wake up, America, before it's too late. I'm Ron Edwards.
You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right, General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoza. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoza Live, daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you'll get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decision concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardozalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardozalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Term life insurance. It can be a powerful way to protect your assets and your family. You work hard to earn and save your money to build a nest egg for the future. Don't let it get wiped out because you didn't plan ahead. Take the time now and make a small investment in $500,000 or more in quality term life insurance. Call the Term Lifeline and let us shop the best companies to give you the lowest rates. We specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. Ask about some of our 10 and 20-year fixed rate plans with guaranteed rates. Call the Term Lifeline right now for your free insurance quote. 800-870-3609. 800-870-3609. You owe it to yourself to protect your family and your assets. Make term life insurance part of that plan. Call the Term Lifeline right now. 800-870-3609. 800-870-3609.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
You're listening to the Shake and Wake Radio Network, where the truth is all that matters, and the truth will make you free. ShakeandWakeRadio.com.
Good evening, America, and those listening around the world. It's time for the Conservative Syndicate with your host, John Matthews, self-ordained, politically incorrect, mad prophet of the airwaves. The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most knowledgeable activists and pundits today that together seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement with those seeking the truth regarding the similarities and differences between the religion of politics and the politics of religion.
We have put in place the toughest ethics laws and toughest transparency rules of any administration in history. In history.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever.
Did you mislead Americans about taxes, about keeping your plan, in order to get the bill passed?
No, I did not. All you can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is. For some reason, people keep on being surprised when I do what I said I was going to do. I'm doing it because I said I was going to do it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
And now, your host, John Matthews. Okay, hey, we are back. I am your host, John Matthews. Hour 2 here on the Conservative Syndicate, coming to you live right now, out here from the left coast. And I have my co-host, partner in crime, Joe Hakos from the Dryer Report, or from Dryer Report. And I hope you got something out of the first hour. Get the big picture here. Keep the big picture in front of you, because there's going to be all kinds of distractions and all kinds of attempts to divert and get away from the main issue. I think there was I can't remember the name of one of the generals back in the Vietnam War, talking about strategies and how you win wars. And he kept saying, one of the things, I got to look this guy up, because I remember just hearing it and it just hit me. He said, you got to keep the main thing the main thing. You can't get distracted by everything else that's going on out there, and understand that everything that happens is for the main thing. It's there's very many elements directed towards one central goal, and that is the fundamental transformation of the United States of America. The words spoken by our current president, Barack Obama, back in November
or late October of 2008. Now, while we're waiting for Bob to come on, I wanted to kind of surmise here. I had this article up here, and it kind of got by me as we were talking about everything else. It's a very short article written by Amanda Macias from the Business Insider. And this will probably, I think, put things better in perspective than anything that we've said. She talks about a gentleman back in the days of Nazi Germany. And this guy's name was, Landmesser. What's his first name? She doesn't give his first name. That's weird. Okay. Anyway, there's a gentleman by the name of Landmesser, Mr. Landmesser. And Mr. Landmesser was photographed during a Nazi rally in which everybody was, Sieg Heiling Hitler. And he was seen or photographed as the lone person in the group that refused to do that. The picture shows, if you see the picture, you go out there and check it out on the website or out there on internet, and you see this massive group of people, all with their hands held up, yelling Sieg Heil. He's standing in the middle of the group with his hands folded. And he was located. He was an ex-member of the Nazi Party. And he left the Nazi Party when they told him that he could not marry his Jewish wife, the woman that he ended up marrying, who was Jewish. And the story just relates to how he went from somebody who was held in high regard in the Nazi Party to somebody who was eventually imprisoned for his refusal to acknowledge that Adolf Hitler was the Führer. And his wife was executed in one of the concentration camps out there. And so this is very indicative of what's going to be happening here. Now, I don't always like making references to Nazi Germany when we talk about America. But the fascism is fascism. And what we see here already preparing, already snowballing, already coming to fruit is fascist actions by the left. Joe brought it out just before the break that we've got gay or homosexual activists walking through the White House, by the way, at Obama's invitation. They were invited there by Barack Obama.
He's never invited me.
Yeah, he's never invited me either, I often wanted to join one of those raffles that they used to have, $5. Throw in $5 and you win a dinner with the president. I mean, that would be a very short dinner. They'd probably be serving me in the kitchen, because
he'd have to come to my house.
Well, I'd be satisfied with a beer summit.
And he would not get in my house. It'd be out there in the driveway.
Yeah, we'll meet out on the curb. And it would be a beer summit. I'll bring the root beer. You can bring what you want. I'll bring the root beer. But the point being is that this gentleman, Landmesser, I don't know why they didn't put his first name in here. Oh, his name was August Landmesser. I saw the name August. I thought I was talking about the month. August Landmesser. And like I said, he was a member of the Nazi Party in 1931. And he worked his way up into the ranks and became... basically, the Nazi Party became the only legal political affiliation that Germans were allowed to be part of. Okay, you remember the Chancellor of Germany gave Hitler complete rule, carte blanche, suspended the Constitution, said do what you got to do to fix it. Okay, Landmesser met a young Jewish woman, wanted to marry her, and he was imprisoned for that. He was then let out of prison. He married the woman anyway, and they tried to get out of Germany. He was found. I think he ended up in Denmark, but he was discovered and found and imprisoned once again. And his wife was sent to a concentration camp, and his child, and he never saw him again. This is indicative of where we're going with this new brand of fascism that's coming on now, where the government is starting to basically say anybody that disagrees with us needs to be silenced, period. Now, yeah. I know that sounds extreme, but that is what it is. Like I said, these people are not hiding it anymore. It's not like we're presupposing or we're speculating. These people are telling us. They're coming out and telling us, you guys are history. We won our battle. You're history now. And we're going to do everything we can to remove you because you're the last bastion of conscience. You're the last conscience. We need to eliminate the conscience of America. Barry Goldwater talked about the conscience of a conservative. That conscience needs to be removed so that anarchy can rule. And once anarchy rules, the government now has license to come in and supplant their real intent, which is to rule over everybody.
Yes, and then Jim Carrey's going to be even more upset.
Yeah. And not only will he be wearing the white beard, his hair will turn white also. So, if he thinks that forcing inoculations on children is fascism right now, hey, let's give it another couple of years, especially if we get Hillary Clinton in there, Obama version 3.0. God help us if that happens. So,
we're coming to get you, Jim. We're going to get you very, very hard, Jim.
Sorry.
Okay, so having said that, we're going to switch gears here where I would start talking a little bit about the economy. Remember the economy? The thing that everybody was worried about until...
It's the economy stupid?
Yeah. Everything was worried about it until the Confederate flag started being waved all over the place. So,
do we know anybody that knows anything about economy, John?
Well, I do. I have a gentleman here with us, Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live. Probably knows as much about it as anybody I know. Certainly knows more about it than I do. I've always been one of those people. I actually was an accountant for a good number of years. I was an auditor, and I was great with other people's money, terrible with my own. I was one of those people. I still got checks in my checkbook. I got money, right? I managed a $23 million budget at the naval station out here in Long Beach, and couldn't manage a $300 checking balance. But that is what it is. But anyway, Bob, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, John. How are John and Joe doing tonight?
Oh, we're on a roll, man. We're on a roll.
I'm just fine, Robert.
You know what, Joe? You've been smoking too much of that funny stuff.
It's legal in some places.
Yeah, but not where you're at.
That's true.
Funny you should say that, Bob. That was the first thing that came out of my mouth. What medication are you on?
It's all prescribed. I told you that already.
Yeah.
Yeah, by whom?
A trained medical professional.
You're a veterinarian?
Hey, you go. You call it tomatoes. I'll call it tomatoes.
Okay. So, lots of interesting things going on in the world today. You guys been paying attention to our buddies over there in Greece?
Well, I started looking at things last night. I have to be honest with you. I'm a little bit confused as to why the head of Greece does not want a bailout. I thought all heads of government in the European Union wanted bailouts.
Oh, John, it's not that he doesn't want the bailout. He's trying to hold out for better terms.
There you go. He wants his bailout.
Yeah, and that's where the problem is. And the rub here is that the lenders aren't going for this. They're not going to be intimidated back in the wall. Although I guess he has sent a message over that he's willing to take some drastic changes. All his creditors really want him to do is to become fiscally responsible and not continue the same bad habits that he's had in the past. But I'll tell you what, I think that the lenders and the International Monetary Fund have just about had enough of this guy. And so what's going to wind up happening here is that they're not going to quit the European Union. They're going to be thrown out of the European Union, mainly because they missed this $2.5 billion payment to the IMF that was due, and they couldn't scrape the money together to do it. And now that they've closed all of their banks, and you have to understand the system in Greece. In Greece, the average person is making somewhere around $1,000 a month net to them after all the stuff that's taken out for their retirements and their medication and their health care and all the different stuff that's going on. They get about $1,000 a month to spend, or actually. I guess $1,000 a month U.S. dollars, not necessarily euros. But now what's going on is that they are limiting the amount of euros that they can take out of the bank. The banks are closed, so they have to go to an ATM. The ATM is limiting them to 60 euros. 60 euros, about $97 or somewhere in that vicinity.
67 euros.
I'm sorry?
67 euros.
Okay, for 7 years, you're going to call me a liar, Joe?
Well, I'm just trying to be accurate, Robert.
Okay. Anyway, it's about
you want to use your $100
We're just a currency exchange here. We're not.
Okay. It's less than $100 a week that they can take out, and the problem is because they made it this 67 euros. They are running out of $10 bills and $20 bills, which are necessary to get you to this 67 euros. So they're not going to be able to do that. So most people are going to be able to get about 40 euros, maybe 50. Maybe not 50 because they've got the 10s, right? So maybe 40 euros. And so they can't get the whole amount that's there. In addition to that, if they did that, they still can't get except about $500, $400 to $500 a month, half of what their discretionary income is. So the average Greek citizen is going to really hurt. Now, if they get thrown out of the euro, which could very well happen by this Sunday, then Greece is going to have to start printing their own money, and they're back into the drachmas again. Now, we've talked about fiat currencies. That's exactly what would happen back with Greece because they're bankrupt. Their assets are less than their liabilities, so they have no net worth, which means this drachma's got nothing to support it with. The people are going to only be able to buy things in Greece unless, which I suspect, Russia's going to come to their aid. If Russia's saying, "Yeah, we'll help you guys," because it's the next Western society on the target line of Putin. So the economics of this really add into this. They're going to go to this drachma. They're not going to be able to buy anything from the United States or any other country because the drachma is worthless. And the people are going to go through a horrible depression, not recession. And it's going to be a horrible thing. And you're going to see a lot of aid and stuff going in there. They're going to become a third world country that nobody's accustomed to Greece being that way, which is why the IMF is trying to find a way out of this. Why I don't understand why the prime minister is arguing about the solution. He ought to be on his knees thanking God they're willing to do anything to save the economy of Greece. So,
but isn't that the general mindset of people like this? That they, what is the government system in Greece? Are they Democrat socialists? Are they?
They're social. They're democratically socialist, and the problem here is that now what the Tsipras has done is that if he doesn't stay in the euro, and he winds up going back there having to print their own worthless money, the drachma. The Tsipras is going to be out of a job. It's just, Greek politics are really unique and they're difficult, but Tsipras is going to be out of a job. That's why he's backpedaling now. Okay. He decided he was going to be a tough SOB, and he was going to dictate because he didn't think that the International Monetary Fund could allow Greece to fail because of what it would wind up doing to the value of the euro. And the International Monetary Fund has decided that it wouldn't get hurt near as bad as having to loan more money to Greece to pay its debt.
Well, isn't that basic economics 101 that when you have more liabilities and assets and you have no way of recovering those liabilities, what do? You reorganize. You go bankrupt and you reorganize. I would think that the European community, that would be the natural course of action. It's not, we got to bail these guys out because it's going to hurt us. By bailing them out, they're actually hurting themselves, are they not?
Yeah, they actually are hurting themselves. And what they're trying to do is to maintain the stature of the euro because by this, Greece is one of 19 countries that are in the Eurozone. And basically with Greece failing, that sets the stage for Spain and Portugal to fail as well and Ireland to fail as well. They'll fall like dominoes. And what will wind up happening then is the Eurozone will fail in total. And then economically, you'll see a depression in those 19 countries like we never saw in the United States in the 30s.
Okay, now if we went that route, let's just speculate here a little bit. this happens. It sets off a chain reaction, a domino effect, and we start seeing the euro deflate to maybe the value of a ruble a few years ago. I think at one time it was like 14,000 rubles to $1 or something. And when the Russian Union fell apart or whatever. But this happens. So say the euro starts taking a hit. Now, you have the countries, as you mentioned, you have Russia coming in here, and you got China sitting off here to the sidelines. It's already done a pretty good job of screwing us up. These guys become major players then in terms of how this trickles into our economy. Am I right?
That's absolutely right.
Okay, yeah. So what are we looking at there?
Originally, you'd heard a lot of the guys on Wall Street, not so much on Wall Street, but a lot of the finance guys were saying that this whole issue was not going to have much of an effect on the United States. But if you're looking at the stock markets today, you can see that we're worried. We're taking a hit in the stock market, and if Greece indeed doesn't stay in the euro, you're going to see stocks worldwide go down, and you're going to start seeing, and you hit the nail right on the head, John. You're going to start seeing Russia and China trying to barter their way in to get control of Greece.
Right, they're basically going to just try to buy them out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, if that happens, and we do have this chain reaction where we have China and Russia coming in, and let's look at it like real estate. We're going to buy Spain, we're going to buy Portugal, we're going to buy Greece. That really puts us in a very hard place when we talk about this, the fact that China's been excluded from this Trans-Pacific partnership that they're developing right now.
And John, that's the part of Economics 101 that you were bringing up earlier. Remember, we were talking about restraint of trade that we have with China already. Mm-hmm. Now, think of what happens to the balance of trade for the United States if all of a sudden China controls Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Greece. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be able to buy products from any of those countries on a fair and level basis the way that we're doing right now, because China and or Russia is going to be controlling it. And that's where the economy of the United States is going to get hurt.
And do you really think Angela Merkel is going to allow that to happen?
Well, you know what? I don't know that, you would think Germany doesn't want Greece to fail.
That is true.
But Germany, while the mark is the support of the International Monetary Fund, you have to understand that there are 19 countries involved, and Angela Merkel, unfortunately, only has one of the 19 votes.
Okay, so if I want to keep with my train of thought here, because when we get into talking these types of strategies and stuff, it becomes mind-boggling. The idea here then is, while all this is going on, we're being told that this great Trans-Pacific partnership is being developed now. They're actually saying that they hope to have it, the actual partnership written and passed by the end of this year. That sounds real promising. The government's going to throw together something just to be able to pass something. But the idea now that we have, my understanding that this Trans-Pacific agreement, partnership, is supposed to deal with these issues that you've told us about, the issues of tariffs and taxes and stuff like that. This throws all of that into the trash, does it not? I mean, if China has that kind of leverage, we're back to fighting wars with tariffs and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of the argument. We talked about that, John, a week or two ago about not allowing China to get a foothold to become the barometer for the value of currency worldwide. If China winds up bailing out Greece and they wind up bailing out Portugal and Spain and Ireland, then it looks like they would be the standard for currency and they would control it. And you're absolutely right. It would throw that entire Pacific Trade Agreement out the window because it would have absolutely no bearing and no advantage to us. That's why you saw such a hard push by the right to support Obama's left to get this thing going. But if they're not able to put in a strict guidelines for a level playing field, then it's of no use anyway. It's not going to work. The United States has got to be able to maintain this parity in trade. And if they don't maintain this parity in trade, then it's going to be no use to us at all anyway, because we'll lose control.
And and following the pattern of this president, who never knows when to admit defeat or that he made a mistake, they'd probably try to push that thing through anyways, just so they can have another political victory, and that would blow up in her face, much like ISIS and everything else that's going on.
Well, yeah, John. I mean, one of the scary things is that at this juncture, Obama's worried about legacies. He's not worried about winning for the general public. He's worried about legacies, and that's why he's celebrating over all of last week, because he is setting what he thinks to be his legacies. If he gets a specific trade agreement, that's one more notch on his gun, so to speak.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're not going to immediately feel the downturn from that. He'll go out of office a hero, and then shortly after that, we're going to crumble.
Well, I want to talk about that when we come back, because that's always been something I've learned about economics, the cyclical cycle of what goes on during an administration. But right now, we gotta take a break here. It's time for Moments of Madness. We've got Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live with us. Stay with us, guys. We'll be back in just a moment. Today on Moments of Madness. Senator Ted Cruz has referred to the two rulings last week by the Supreme Court of the United States as America's darkest 24 hours. Half-wit political commentators like Yahoo's Jerry Adler calls it a week that lived up to America's great declaration. Nothing illustrates as well the political and moral divide across our land like these two statements, and many Americans ask simply, how did it come to this? Just 5 days before America elected its first transracial president, Barack Obama declared to our nation and the world that he was 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. Today, just 17 months from the end of his administration, as we tepidly cast our eyes from sea to shining sea upon the remnant of our once great land, a land both John Kennedy and Ronald Reagan referred to as a city upon a hill, a direct reference taken from Jesus' parable on salt and light, we see Obama's prophetic declaration coming to fruit. The precipice excavated under the tenure of our current president, Congress, and Supreme Court lies clearly before us. The Republic Benjamin Franklin warned us we would only have as long as we could keep it. Indeed, now seems on the verge of being lost. The light that once shone brightly as a beacon of promise for the tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free has been all but extinguished as we watch the dark, sinister shadows of immoral tyranny that inhabit the red light district of Columbia swallow up the hope, promise, and opportunity our forefathers so painstakingly endeavored to preserve in our Declaration and Constitution, and so many of our fellow citizens gave their lives to protect. For the people of our land that once proudly proclaimed we were one nation under God have chosen to forsake that God and shape their own calf out of gold. There are several factors that have contributed to this, but they all have been birthed from the same place, the ignorant soul. The soul that has taken blessing for granted, redefining it as its entitlement. The soul that has rationalized sin is not sin if it makes one feel happy. The soul that believes sacrifice is the duty of others as penance for their ancestors' acts of oppression. The soul that redefines life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a mission statement that justifies placing creation above its creator, declaring, I am God, there is no other. Herein lies the madness of humanity, to think that legislation can free man from the consequence of sin, when in fact it forever enslaves and condemns those who seek amnesty from it. For God says those who live for the law die by it. To believe deceitful rhetoric that promises to heal pain and bring unity and equality through submission to government, when all it will achieve is separating the sheep from the goats before a righteous God who cannot stand in the presence of unrighteousness. To believe in the words of our president that the slow, steady effort of fundamental transformation is rewarded with justice that arrives like a thunderbolt. Obama promised America fundamental transformation. In the eyes of both his supporters and opponents, it looks like he has achieved that. Here lies the madness. That thunderbolt of justice he speaks of, God can make strike twice in the same place. And when God strikes, things burn. This is John Matthews for Moments of Madness. Hey, we are back right here on the Conservative Syndicate, and I hope you enjoyed that moment of madness. I think it sums up pretty well what we're looking at these days. And back to our discussion here. We've got Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live. He streams Monday through Friday. Right now, he's got into the simulcast mode. He's out there on Spreaker. He's out there on Roar Network. And Blog Talk Radio also, but Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. Western Time. That would be 7 to, what's that, 4 to 6, 7 to 9 Eastern Time. You can go to his website, robertcardozalive.com, and pick up his schedules and where he's at and what he's doing, okay? Okay, Bob, we were talking about this situation, and you hit on this just before the break, the idea of what's happening over in China, or not in China, but in Greece, and how that could be affected if a player like China or Russia, or maybe a combination of the two, step in, and we have some kind of domino effect here on the euro, with problems with Spain and Portugal, all these things that you brought up, and we get back into this main thought here that this really will, in a lot of ways, affect what happens in our economy. In the big picture, and you were talking about the Obama legacy. You were talking about how he's more worried about that than he is about anything else, which would, like I said, would make me believe, if history, if he follows history, his history, is that he would push something like the Trans-Pacific Partnership through, in spite of the damage that would do, because he would be out of office by the time the effects are. Now we talk about the cyclical cycle of presidencies, and it's my belief, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it's my belief that presidents really have very little to do with how the economy functions unless they do it through things like regulations and taxation. But they don't really have the ability to determine how the private sector functions. This president has been in some ways very effective that way. But my history has always shown me that the effects of what goes on during an administration is not felt anywhere from 5 to 6 years after that president has left. And examples I use is the prosperity that has been attributed to Clinton is actually the result of what Reagan did. And what Clinton did, when everybody thought he was such a great financial manager, actually trickled in and began to fall during the Bush administration. And now we've got the Bush administration, or now we got the Obama administration, which will 5 or 6 years from now begin to manifest in our economy in ways that we don't even know it yet. Am I making sense when I say that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right on the money, John, and that's exactly the truth. You and I have talked about this before. When we were talking about trickle-down economics, in this particular case, I'm using the term because it trickles down to succeeding presidencies, and then all of a sudden, the next guy gets the credit for it, then the guy after that gets the credit for it, then it all falls apart, and that guy gets the credit for that, right? Mm-hmm. And so the legacy of what does or doesn't happen with regard to the 8 years of the Obama administration, we're not going to actually see that happen for about 5 to 8 years, somewhere down the line. And so that's just the way the economy works. And you're absolutely right. Presidents don't really have an awful lot that they can do to control the economy unless they get the government involved in what they refer to as a command economy, like we did to try and get out of the recession. We created a command economy that the government was controlling. It was a false economic road based on no interest rates or low interest rates, and based on the reorganization of the banks, and that didn't go the way that the people were told it was going to be. And so those things, we're not going to feel the brunt of that for some time. And Wall Street hasn't been affected by this fiasco at all, if you think about it. And so we're headed for another bubble. And that bubble actually started being created during the Obama presidency, when he was supposedly fixing a solution to the recession that we were in. The truth is the Band-Aids and the things that he was doing are going to come back and bite us in a big way, and we're headed for another bubble very similar, if not worse than the one we had before. And Wall Street will be right at the footsteps of it.
It's a very scary assessment of things, and I think much truer than any of us really want to admit. I wanted to ask you here. I got into a short conversation with somebody today who was a pro-union person, and we were talking about this idea of the upcoming. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear whether or not unions can enforce or take money from union members to contribute to political movements and campaigns and candidates that they themselves don't support. And we got into this talk about bailouts. And one of the things that he was telling me was he worked as a shop steward at GM, or at a car manufacturing company during the recession when the government had to bail everybody out. And he was telling me that, although he didn't like the idea of doing it, it was necessary for the government to bail the industry out, because had the industry failed, it would have affected so many other industries and would have sent us into a virtual death spiral. My argument to him was it should have happened anyways. We should have allowed them to reorganize, because what happens when the government bails you out is the government becomes the owner of what it is you're doing, by proxy perhaps, but they still are going to dictate what goes on. His argument was, well, GM has paid him back. I said, but GM never recovered. GM never recovered from this. GM closed up, did they not?
Even worse than that, John, because I hate to use the word, it was collusionary. But basically, it absolutely was that. They actually rewrote sections of the bankruptcy code to accommodate the bailout of General Motors. And by rewriting it, they allowed in bankruptcy the creation of two different General Motors. And what they did was they took all of the liabilities that the General Motors had, and they plopped those right into the old General Motors. And with the new General Motors, they took all of the assets, all of the new union concessions that were there, all of the contractual concessions that were there, put them into the new ones, so that all the liabilities sat on one side, with all of the the common shareholders of GM stock. All of the new shareholders, which were not the existing common shareholders of the new GM, weren't those people. And so what they wound up doing is they created a new GM with very little debt that was able to make a profit with union concessions on wages and retirement. And they did that, and that's how they were able to come back and supposedly pay us back? No way, because those millions of GM shareholders that were in that other company, they lost all their money.
Yeah, so isn't this criminal?
I think
if
it
any
is.
other company did that outside of
I heard somebody say, John, that when you talk about what's the word I want to use? I was going to say graft, and I suppose that's what it is. When you talk about graft,
cronyism.
Our forefathers, when they were talking about graft, when we were talking about, and that's not the word I'm looking for, but that's as good as I'm going to get right now.
Cronyism is what it is. It's cronyism.
Well, yeah, but what they were talking about, they weren't talking about money. They weren't talking about being, for sale for money. When they were talking about graft in Washington, D.C., they were talking about the legislators that were elected there not representing the people that put them there. Now, how many times have you and I talked about that? And that's exactly what's going on. The legislators today they're for sale. They're for sale by special interest groups. And you and I aren't one of those.
Okay, so if we're looking at it, my thing was this. This is really what I pitched back at the guy. The idea of the government bailing out private sector industry for any reason, I'd be totally against that. I don't care what the damage is, because the damage that comes from bailing them out is much worse in the long run than having to sit back and reorganize, sell off, or whatever you have to do to get that organization or that business back on its feet. The idea that the government now basically dictates, this is the command economics that you were talking about, that we now have the government determining one way or the other value of the dollar, value of the industry, value of the employees performing the work, and everything else. So it puts everything in the hands of people who have historically shown that they don't know their butts from a hole in the ground. And so that it's a quick fix. It's putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery is really what it is. And we've seen the idea is that GM is still not out of the hot water. because they had to try to generate profits as shareholders, the quality of their work has gone down. They've got major recalls on vehicles because of cheap work and stuff like that. How do that puts you right back in the liability column. You've got millions and millions of cars out there.
Aligned with yours, and everybody kept talking about we're never going to allow any company to be too big to fail again, and yet we created that same situation all over again, not just with the automakers in Detroit, but we also did it with the banks that are on a national basis. In my belief is the same as yours. You know what? You're not too big to fail. You got to be allowed to fail, and that's what drives in an economy. Whether it makes it sink into a recession or into a depression, it's still going to come back out if you use a judicious procedures and become meticulous at pulling yourself out of there. So GM, should it have been bailed out that way? In my personal opinion, I think that I'm siding with you here. No, I don't think so. Ford never had to be bailed out. Why? Because they actually had good procedures in place to make a profit, make money, exist without that bailout from the United States government.
Yeah, dealing with the same auto union as GM, huh?
Yep, absolutely, Joe.
Oh.
And if we were going to bail out, you're using taxpayer dollars. We as taxpayers should get some kind of rebate or credit for doing that. It shouldn't be the government. The government should be paid back. We, the taxpayers who bailed them out, should be paid back. That's how I see it.
How much of that money, Joe, or John, when you start thinking about the bailout, they didn't increase our taxes or do any of those kinds of things for that because they're already usurping more than they have coming to them. They took tax dollars or printed money or whatever they wound up doing and took it right out of the general fund of the Treasury. And so when they took that out of there, they're supposed to put it back in. But that is exactly why we wind up with $17 trillion in debt, $19 trillion in debt. It's because we gave the money to the automakers and to the banks and to the stock market, to Wall Street. And when we were still supporting a war and all the rest of this stuff, and we wound up using our credit card for that. And that's exactly what happened to the deficit.
Yeah, let's continue that. We got to take a break here real quick here, and we're going to continue our discussion here with Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live. Stay with us right here in the Conservative Syndicate. We'll be right back.
You can catch all our archives at theconservativesyndicate.net. The Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives.
Prices are for base buildings only. May not be available in some areas. Attention business owners, do you want a stimulus package that really works? Before you spend thousands of dollars more than you should on your next building project, listen to this. General Steel has a stimulus package designed to help you save as much as half the cost of conventional construction on your next building. As much as half. That's right, General Steel can save you thousands of dollars with a pre-engineered steel building designed for your business or church. How about a 50 by 100 foot building for under $30,000? So don't pay thousands more than you should without calling General Steel first and save as much as half the cost and time of conventional construction. With the projected demand for steel in Japan and China, prices may be skyrocketing.
877-927-3360. 877-927-3360. 877-927-3360.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoza. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoza Live, daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you'll get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decision concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardozalive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardozalive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, we are back right here on the Conservative Syndicate. And again, you want to pick up our archives. You want to listen to this show again at your leisure. Check out some of our other shows, read about us, find out about us, read our blogs. Joe and I both write. You can go to our website, theconservativesyndicate.net. Pick it all up there and find out anything you want to know about us in terms of broadcast times, stations, networks, the whole 9 yards. Theconservativesyndicate.net. Got Bob Cardoza from Robert Cardoza Live with us doing his weekly segment. Bob, in the time we have left, you've done a really good job, I think, of speculating for us as to how this thing could trickle down and hurt us over in Greece. What do you see happening right now?
You know what? I've got to tell you, there's a part of me that says that the International Monetary Fund and the lenders to Greece are fed up, and they would like not to help bail Greece out. And I think that Tsipras has got his head stuck in the sand. I was going to say something else, but I wouldn't do that. But he's got his head stuck in the sand. I think at some point now, everybody's got to save some face, and everybody's got to save the European nation. And so what's going to wind up happening is before this coming Sunday, Greece is going to backpedal, and they're going to agree to probably 90% of the demands of their lenders to change their spending policies and their what's the word I want to use? I don't know why I'm having a tough time coming up with these words today, but basically they're on an austerity program, but their austerity program isn't what the lenders think it should be. They're not being really proficient at trying to make their economy a healthy economy. Mm-hmm. They're spending money where they shouldn't be spending money, and that's what the lenders are seeing. And as a result, Greece can't pay off its debt the way it was supposed to. You know, when that original debt was actually laid out there, it was laid out there because the lenders saw that Greece, if they had made these changes, would have been able to pay back that debt and would have been able to survive the economy. But Greece ignored all that and didn't do it. And so when it came down time to make that payment, they couldn't do it. I think they're going to try and bail them out one last time. And if Greece doesn't comply with the new standards for changing their economy, then they're going to let them fail. But I think that the Eurozone has got too much at stake, because if they let Greece fail, then, as I had mentioned before, the domino effect is going to take place. I think what they're doing here is they're letting Tsipras flex his muscles. They're flexing their own muscles. They're trying to show Portugal, Spain, and Ireland, hey, we're not going to support you. You guys are doing a good job at trying to get your economy back up. You're going in the right direction. But if you pull this same kind of a stunt with us that Greece is doing, we're going to let you go and fail too. And I think they can't just continue to bail Greece out, because it sends the wrong message to these other countries that are having a tough time.
Well, it seems to me the warning flag here is the fact that the IMF is actually debating whether to do it or not. Because isn't it a fact that the IMF is basically, they're kind of like the guys that go out there with their money and they put it in both pots. You know, yeah. They fund the enemy and they fund the allies, because somewhere along the line they're going to win. And the idea that they're sitting here going, I don't know if we're going to win on this, that to me is kind of scary in that regard.
Yeah, they're hedging their bets, and they're starting to say, and they've already said that, you know, perhaps the Eurozone would be better off allowing Greece to fail. Now, is that good for the Euro? Is it good for the Eurozone? No, it's really not. But it's not as bad as if they loan Greece more money and Greece winds up defaulting because they won't change their economic structure.
I see what you're saying. So, but in some regards, isn't that what we've been doing in this country? We really aren't, you know, we're just saying, okay, we're going to spend our way out of our deficit and we just keep multiplying it.
That's exactly what we did. We never went on, you know, in the United States, remember the dialogue that was going on, that all of Europe was going on an austerity program, they're cutting back on all of their expenses and doing all those things. And the United States was coming to a point where what system were we going to use? Were we going to get into an austerity program? Were we going to control all this banking and cut everything back and violate a lot of these contractual issues? And the United States decided, the Department of Treasury decided that, or I should say the administration, decided that we weren't going to go on an austerity program. We were going to spend our way out. So we got the Federal Reserve to start loaning money, big money, to banks at zero interest and allowing those banks to charge between 2.4 and 3.6% interest on it, which means they were making 3% on money that cost them nothing. And when they would loan it out, the Federal Reserve would give them 3 times the amount of contractual money they loaned out back in actual cash to loan out again once they had done that. That is not an austerity program. That's spending money and printing dollars that we don't have any support or backup for.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we basically, what we've got going on here is our government saying,
Steve, can I call you Steve? Hi, Steve, I'm natural. Say something. Why aren't you guys saying anything?
Our government, or the taxpayers, we're the ATM.
From Foster Farms, simply better.
Is there something else playing there?
I'm sorry, John. I'm hearing a Foster's Farm commercial.
Okay, yeah, I was hearing some kind of commercial too. Anyway, what it looks like here is that
ultra high def TVs with mind blowing picture quality.
Cut in on you, John.
Yeah, where is that coming
Ready
from?
for color that's realer than.
Well, it's not coming from me.
Oh.
Might be coming from these guys. I don't know.
Oh, I know what it is. Joe's out there doing research, and he hit one of those sites that has the video of the plays when you can call it up, right?
No, I took care of that. I took care of that. I do not have auto start anymore.
Ah, okay, all right. Well, I'm back to what I was saying here, because we've only got a couple minutes left here. What it seems like is, in this regard, Greece is sitting there basically sitting over there going, well, we don't have any more money. Out over here, this government says, well, we've got the taxpayers. That's our ATM. We just can keep withdrawing from them.
Yep.
And, that goes back to Thatcher's statement, socialism is great until everybody runs out of money.
And that's why the value of the dollar continues to be lowered and depleted, John. We keep printing more and more money with no backup to it.
Yeah, right.
So it will happen here. We can't do it better, so we ought to learn from Greece.
I hope we learn the lesson. I hope we learn from Greece and not repeat the lesson.
Well, given the status of what we've got out there in terms of who's going to be running the show next year, I'm not so sure that we have any answers. I mean, the only guy I can really look at now and say might even have a clue would be Trump, and God help us if he gets there.
Boy, did you see what happened to him today?
Huh?
He lost his Celebrity Apprentice show. NBC's completely disavowed himself of him. The Miss Universe contest is completely disavowed from him. His golf partners have completely disavowed from him. He's and all of his Macy's won't handle any of his products in New York now. This guy in the last 2-3 days has just created you know what? He's so rich. Maybe he just doesn't need that money anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if it does what it did last time. Just kind of get him to pull out of the race, or not. Let's see if the guy's really got balls. That's how I see it. I'm not a big fan of the guy. I love businessmen. I love listening to him talk, but I don't know. I really don't even want to go off on that because I just think
I like intelligent dialogue. I can't stand hot air.
Yeah, well, it's one thing just to try to make yourself sound like something. It's another thing to do it. So we'll see what's going on. Anyway, we're out of time, Bob. I want to give you a moment to plug your show and let everybody know what's going on.
Well, you know what? If you'd like a daily diet of Robert Cardoza Live, just go to my website at robertcardozalive.com. Click on Listen Live. You'll be able to hear my show from Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. And you know what? We've got a variety of things where they're covering a lot of things. If you want to test the water, you know what? Tune in tomorrow. My good buddy John Matthews will be with me as well. Hey, John, thank you so much for the time today.
All right, thanks so much, man. Great job. I always learn so much now when we talk. So, Bob Cardoza, go to his website, robertcardozalive.com. Thanks a lot, my friend.
Thanks,
okay,
John.
Guys.
Good night, John and Joe.
All right, we're done for tonight. We're done for the week. We'll be back on Monday. Visit our website, theconservativesyndicate.net, and you can pick up all of our archives, and anything you want to know about our show is there. theconservativesyndicate.net. We'll be back on Monday. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more happening between now and then. One thing about politics is it just never goes away. It just never goes away.
Independence Day, America.
Oh, yes. Happy Independence Day. And this should be a special weekend for us. This is a time to sit back and remember who we are and know that we've come up against enemies from without and within, and we always end up walking away eventually the victors. So stay focused, folks, and don't give up. Don't give the fight up. Fight the good fight of faith. We'll talk to you on Monday. God bless you all. Have a good weekend. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Conservative Syndicate, the globally syndicated, politically incorrect talk show that seeks to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state. We want to make you aware you can find and access all of our show archives at our website, theconservativesyndicate.net, as well as our broadcast stations and times. That's the conservativesyndicate.net. We so appreciate you taking time to tune in, and we so look forward to continuing to bring you the best and uncompromised talk radio available on the net today. And remember, folks, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down in life. It only matters how many times you get up. I'm John Matthews, signing off until next time, right here on the Conservative Syndicate. God bless you, and may God continue to bless America.